A shy cowboy's respectful gesture to a mysterious stranger in a saloon leads to an unexpected partnership when he discovers she's the local marshal hunting the same outlaws who destroyed his family. The stench hits Tommy Brennan first. Not the usual cocktail of whiskey, sweat, and tobacco that clings to every frontier saloon, but something sharper. Metallic. Fresh blood mixed with the acrid bite of recently fired gunpowder. Tommy pauses at the batwing doors of the Broken Wheel Saloon, his calloused fingers tracing the splintered wood where bullets have chewed through pine. The silence inside feels wrong, heavy as storm clouds before lightning strikes. Copper Creek, Arizona Territory. October 1887. A town that should be alive with Saturday night revelry lies quiet as a graveyard. Tommy's boots whisper against the boardwalk as he pushes through the doors. Inside, overturned chairs and shattered glass tell stories of violence. But there, at the far end of the bar, sits a figure in a dark coat, nursing a whiskey like nothing happened. The stranger's hat brim shadows their face. Slender fingers wrapped around the glass. Something about the posture, straight-backed, alert, speaks of coiled danger. Tommy removes his hat, a gesture learned at his mother's knee 20 years ago. "Ma'am?" The stranger's head turns slightly. A woman's voice, low and measured. Most men wouldn't have noticed. Noticed what? That I'm not a man. Tommy's cheeks burn red above his scraggly beard. He's always been better with horses than people, more comfortable under open sky than under scrutinizing eyes. "Didn't mean to presume, ma'am. Just seemed polite." The woman studies him with eyes like winter steel. Polite's rare in these parts, especially after what happened here tonight. Tommy approaches the bar, his spurs chiming softly against the floorboards. Up close, the damage tells a clearer story. 3 men, maybe 4 based on the bullet patterns. Professional work, tight groupings, no wasted shots. "You see what happened?" Tommy asks, settling onto a bar stool 2 seats away from the stranger. "I saw the aftermath." She gestures toward a dark stain on the floor behind the bar. Bartender took one in the chest. Clean through the heart. Tommy's stomach tightens. He'd known Pete Kowalski for 3 years, ever since drifting into Copper Creek. Pete had been kind to a shy cowboy who stammered over simple orders. Pete was a good man. Good men die easy in bad times. The woman's voice carries no emotion, just fact delivered like a weather report. Tommy notices details now that grief had initially obscured. Brass shell casings scattered like deadly confetti. A playing card, the ace of spades, pinned to the wall with a throwing knife. And there, carved into the bar's surface with deliberate precision, Jr. "You know what that means?" Tommy points to the initials. The woman's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. "I know." She stands, and Tommy sees the badge pinned inside her coat, a 5-pointed star that catches lamplight like a promise of justice. "U.S. Marshal." "Name's Sarah Kane," she says, extending a gloved hand. "And you are?" "Tommy Brennan." His handshake is firm despite his nervousness. I worked the Morrison Ranch outside town." "Worked?" Marshal Kane corrects. "Morrison Ranch burned 3 days ago. Along with the family." Tommy's world tilts sideways. The Morrisons had been like family to him, the only people who'd looked past his stutter and social awkwardness to see the man underneath. "No," he whispers. "They can't be. I'm sorry." For the first time, Kane's voice carries genuine sympathy. "The same men who did this likely hit your ranch. The Jackrabbit Gang." The initials on the bar suddenly make terrible sense. Jr. Jackrabbit. Tommy slumps against the bar, the weight of loss crushing down like a collapsed mine shaft. Sarah Kane watches him with professional assessment, reading grief and something else, a dangerous spark kindling behind his quiet eyes. "Tell me about the Morrisons," she says. Tommy's voice comes out rough as sandpaper. "John Morrison took me in when I was 16. Orphaned, couldn't barely string 2 words together without stumbling. His wife Mary, she taught me to read. Their daughter Emma." He stops, unable to continue. "You loved her. Was going to ask her father for permission to court her. Soon as I saved enough for a proper ring." Tommy's laugh sounds like breaking glass. "Guess that don't matter now." Kane pulls out a leather notebook, its pages filled with neat handwriting. "The Jackrabbit Gang's been hitting ranches across 3 territories. Always the same pattern: kill the men, burn the buildings, take whatever's valuable." "What about the women?" Kane's silence answers the question. Tommy stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need to see it. The ranch. It's not safe. They might come back." "Don't care." Something in Tommy's tone makes Kane reconsider. She studies his face, The set of his jaw, the way his hands have unconsciously formed fists. You know how to handle a gun? John taught me. Said every man should know how to protect what matters. And what matters to you now, Tommy Brennan? Tommy meets her gaze directly for the first time. Justice. The ride to the Morrison Ranch takes 20 minutes through desert scrub and memories. Tommy leads the way on his paint horse, Kane following on a black mare that moves like liquid shadow. The ruins rise from the landscape like broken teeth. Charred timbers reach toward an indifferent sky. The smell of ash and death hangs heavy in the still air. Tommy dismounts slowly, his legs unsteady. This place had been home. Now it's a graveyard. Tommy. Kane's voice carries warning. He turns to see Sheriff Wade Collins approaching on horseback, his star glinting in the afternoon sun. Collins is a big man gone soft around the middle, with the kind of mustache that speaks of vanity rather than virility. Marshal Kane, Collins says, tipping his hat. Didn't expect to see you out here. Following leads, Sheriff. This is Tommy Brennan. He worked for the Morrisons. Collins' eyes narrow as he studies Tommy. Convenient, him being away when his employers got murdered. Tommy's face flushes red. You saying I had something to do with this? I'm saying it's mighty suspicious. Young man like you probably knew where they kept their money. Sheriff Collins, Kane interrupts, her voice carrying federal authority. Mr. Brennan was in town last night. Pete Kowalski served him dinner at the saloon. Multiple witnesses. Pete's dead, Collins points out. Can't verify that story. Tommy takes a step toward Collins, his fists clenched. You calling me a liar? Easy, son. Collins' hand drifts toward his gun. No need for things to get heated. Kane moves between them, her presence diffusing the tension. Sheriff, I'll handle the investigation from here. Federal jurisdiction. Collins' face darkens. This is my county, Marshal. And this is a federal case. Interstate crime. Multiple territories. Kane's tone brooks no argument. Unless you have evidence linking Mr. Brennan to these murders, I suggest you return to town. Collins stares at her for a long moment, then spits tobacco juice into the dust. Watch yourself, Marshal. This territory's got its own way of handling justice. He wheels his horse around and gallops away, leaving a cloud of dust and implied threats. Tommy walks through the ruins like a man navigating a nightmare. Here, the kitchen where Mary Morrison had taught him to read. There, the porch where he'd sat with Emma on summer evenings, working up the courage to hold her hand. Tommy. Kane's voice draws him to what had been John Morrison's study. She's kneeling beside a partially burned safe, its door hanging open like a broken jaw. Papers scattered around it tell stories of a prosperous ranch, cattle sales, land deeds, bank statements. They knew exactly where to look, Kane observes. This wasn't random. Tommy picks up a charred photograph, the Morrison family at last year's harvest festival. Emma's smile seems to mock him from beyond the grave. Someone told them, he says quietly. What makes you say that? John was careful about money. Never talked business in town. Only person who knew about this safe was. Tommy's voice trails off as understanding dawns. Who, Tommy? Sheriff Collins. John asked him about getting a bigger safe just last month. Said he was worried about keeping so much cash on the property. Kane's expression hardens. How much cash? Cattle sales from the spring drive. Near $10,000. A fortune in this territory. Enough to kill for. Kane stands, brushing ash from her knees. We need to get back to town. Now. Why? Because if Collins is working with the Jackrabbit Gang, then we just told him we're on to them. As if summoned by her words, the sound of approaching hoofbeats echoes across the desert. Multiple riders moving fast. Tommy counts the dust plumes. 6 men. Maybe 7. Kane checks her rifle, a Winchester that's seen hard use. Can you shoot, Tommy? Yes, ma'am. Then it's time to prove it. The riders emerge from the heat shimmer like demons from hell. Tommy recognizes the lead horse, Collins Bay gelding. But the sheriff's not alone. 6 hard men flank him, their faces hidden behind bandanas, their intentions written in the steel they carry. Marshal Kane. Collins' voice carries across the desert. You're trespassing on a crime scene. Kane and Tommy take cover behind the ruins of the barn, the charred timbers providing scant protection against rifle fire. He's not even trying to hide it, Tommy mutters. Corrupt lawmen rarely do once they're cornered. Kane's voice remains steady, professional. They figure badges make them untouchable. The riders spread out, surrounding the ruins. Tommy's heart hammers against his ribs like a caged bird. He's never been in a gunfight, never killed a man. The rifle in his hands feels foreign, dangerous. Tommy. Kane's voice cuts through his panic. Look at me. He meets her eyes, finding unexpected calm in their steel-gray depths. Fear's natural. But don't let it control you. Breathe. Squeeze, don't pull. I don't know if I can. You can. Because if we don't stop them here, they'll keep killing. Keep destroying families like yours. The truth of it settles in Tommy's chest like cold iron. These men had murdered the Morrisons. Had burned his home. Had stolen his future with Emma. What do you want, Collins? Kane calls out. Justice, Marshal. You're harboring a murderer. The only murderers here are riding with you. Collins laughs, the sound harsh as crow calls. Prove it. I intend to. Kane reaches into her saddlebags and produces a leather portfolio, its contents protected by oilcloth. Inside, Tommy glimpses official documents, photographs, correspondence. What is that? 3 months of investigation. Kane's voice carries grim satisfaction. The Jackrabbit Gang's been operating under federal protection. Someone in the territorial government's been feeding them information, helping them target the richest ranches. She shows Tommy a photograph, Sheriff Collins shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit outside a bank in Tucson. Territorial Governor Harrison Webb. He's been using Collins to identify targets, then splitting the profits with the gang. Tommy stares at the evidence, understanding flooding through him like ice water. The Morrisons weren't random. John Morrison was planning to run for territorial legislature. He'd been asking questions about missing federal funds, suspicious land deals. Webb needed him silenced. And Emma? Mary? They died because they were witnesses. Because Webb's people don't leave loose ends. The weight of it crushes down on Tommy, not just personal loss but systematic corruption reaching to the highest levels of territorial government. The badge he'd always respected, the law he'd trusted, all of it poisoned. Why are you telling me this? Kane meets his eyes. Because I need help. And because you deserve to know why your family died. Family. The word hits Tommy like a physical blow. The Morrisons had been his family in every way that mattered. What kind of help? The kind that might get us both killed. Before Tommy can respond, Collins' voice booms across the ruins. Time's up, Marshal. Send out the boy and maybe we'll make it quick. Kane checks her ammunition. Tommy, there's something else you need to know. What? I'm not just here about the Jackrabbit Gang. I'm here about you. Tommy's blood turns to winter. What do you mean? Your real name isn't Tommy Brennan. It's Thomas Brennan Webb. You're the governor's nephew. The world tilts sideways. Tommy stares at Kane, his mouth working soundlessly. That's impossible. Your parents died in a cholera outbreak when you were 15. Your Uncle Harrison took you in but you ran away after 6 months. Do you remember why? Fragments surface in Tommy's memory like debris from a shipwreck. A big house in Tucson. A man with cold eyes and colder hands. Whispered conversations about necessary sacrifices and acceptable losses. He wanted me to do things, Tommy whispers. Terrible things. He wanted to train you as his successor. Teach you that power matters more than people. So I ran. And you've been running ever since. Hiding behind a stutter and social awkwardness, pretending to be someone else. Tommy's hands shake as the implications crash over him. The Morrisons, they died because of me. Because I'm his nephew. No. Kane's voice cuts through his self-recrimination like a blade. They died because your uncle's a monster. But you're not him, Tommy. You chose to be different. Did I? Or was I just too much of a coward to face what I really am? You want to know what you really are? Kane grabs his shoulders, forcing him to meet her gaze. You're a man who spent 3 years working an honest job for honest people. Who learned to read so he could better himself. Who was going to ask permission to court a girl because it was the right thing to do. But I'm still his blood. Blood doesn't determine character. Choices do. Collins' voice interrupts their conversation. Last chance, Marshal. Kane releases Tommy's shoulders. So choose. Run away again, let your uncle's corruption spread like poison. Or stand up. Fight back. Show the world that being a Webb doesn't have to mean being a monster. Tommy looks at the evidence in Kane's hands, then at the ruins of his adopted home. Emma's photograph stares up at him from the ash, her smile a reminder of everything he's lost. What do you need me to do? Kane spreads the documents between them, her voice urgent but controlled. This evidence proves the conspiracy, but it's not enough for conviction. We need a confession. Someone on the inside willing to testify. Collins? Collins is a follower. We need the leader. Tommy's stomach drops. My uncle. He's coming here. Tonight. Collins sent word that they'd captured the federal marshal investigating his operation. You're the bait. We're the bait. Tommy stares at the photograph of his uncle, seeing his own features reflected in the older man's face. The same jaw, the same eyes. But where Tommy's gaze holds uncertainty, Harrison Webb's burns with ruthless ambition. If we do this, Tommy says slowly, if we try to take him down, he'll use every resource at his disposal to destroy us. Federal marshals have disappeared before. Witnesses have died in accidents. And if we don't? He keeps killing, keeps stealing, keeps turning this territory into his personal kingdom built on blood and fear. The choice crystallizes with brutal clarity. Safety versus justice. Self-preservation versus doing what's right. Tommy thinks of John Morrison teaching him to shoot, saying every man should know how to protect what matters. Of Mary Morrison patiently helping him sound out difficult words. Of Emma Morrison's hand in his as they watched the sunset from the porch. There's a third option, Tommy says quietly. What? I go to him. Alone. Tell him I want to come home, want to be part of his organization. Get close enough to gather evidence. Kane shakes her head. Too dangerous. He'll see through it. Will he? I'm his nephew. His blood. Maybe he'll believe I finally came to my senses. And maybe he'll put a bullet in your head the moment he sees you. Tommy meets her gaze. Some things are worth the risk. Like what? Like making sure no other family dies the way the Morrisons did. The sun dies behind the mountains, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. Tommy and Kane wait in the ruins, their plan crystallizing like frost on winter glass. Remember, Kane whispers, get him talking. Admitting to the murders. I'll be close enough to hear everything. Tommy nods, his throat dry as desert sand. The badge Kane gave him, a deputy marshal's star, weighs heavy in his pocket. Hoofbeats announce the arrival of Harrison Webb and his entourage. The territorial governor rides like a man who owns the world, his expensive clothes and silver-trimmed saddle speaking of wealth built on others' suffering. Tommy steps out of the shadows, his hands visible and empty. Hello, Uncle. Webb's horse prances nervously as the governor studies his nephew. Up close, the family resemblance is unmistakable, but where Tommy's face shows uncertainty and pain, Webb's displays cold calculation. Thomas. Webb's voice carries no warmth. Sheriff Collins tells me you've been causing trouble. I've been thinking. Dangerous habit for someone in your position. Tommy forces himself to stand straighter, to meet his uncle's gaze. Maybe it's time I stopped running. Time I accepted who I really am. Webb dismounts slowly, his movements predatory. And who are you, Thomas? Oh, Webb. Your nephew. Your heir. My heir. Webb tastes the words like fine wine. Interesting. What brought about this change of heart? Tommy gestures at the ruins around them. This. Seeing what real power looks like. Understanding that the strong take what they want and the weak suffer. The Morrison family was weak? They were obstacles. Webb smiles, and Tommy sees his own damnation reflected in that expression. Very good, Thomas. You're learning. I want to learn more. I want to be part of your organization. Do you? Webb circles Tommy like a predator sizing up prey. And what makes you think you're worthy? Because I know things. About the federal investigation. About Marshal Kane. Webb stops circling. What about Marshal Kane? She's here. In these ruins. Waiting to arrest you. The words hang in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Webb's hand moves to his gun, but Tommy continues speaking. But she doesn't know about the tunnel. What tunnel? Tommy points toward the ruins of the Morrison house. John Morrison was paranoid about Indian raids. Built an escape tunnel from his basement to the old mine shaft. Kane's watching the obvious exits, but she doesn't know about the back way out. Webb's eyes narrow. You're offering to help me escape? I'm offering to help you eliminate a problem. The silence stretches like a held breath. Then Webb laughs, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Very good, Thomas. Very good indeed. You may be a Webb after all. He turns to Collins and his men. Sheriff, take your men and surround the ruins. When Marshal Kane shows herself, kill her. What about the boy? Collins asks. The boy comes with me. It's time he learned the family business. Tommy leads his uncle toward the ruins, his heart hammering against his ribs. Every step takes him deeper into danger but also closer to justice. Tell me about the Morrisons. Tommy says as they pick their way through the debris. What about them? How did you know they had so much cash? Webb's laugh carries no humor. Sheriff Collins has been very helpful in identifying profitable targets. The Morrisons were planning to fund a political campaign against me. I couldn't allow that. So you had them killed. I had obstacles removed. There's a difference. They reach the basement ruins where charred timbers frame a hole in the ground. Tommy points into the darkness. The tunnel entrance is down there. Webb peers into the shadows, then looks at Tommy with new suspicion. You first, nephew. Tommy climbs down into the basement, his boots crunching on broken glass and ash. Webb follows, his gun drawn now, all pretense of family affection abandoned. You know, Thomas, Webb says conversationally, I never believed your sudden change of heart. Tommy's blood turns to ice. Uncle? Did you really think I'd fall for such an obvious trap? I've been playing this game since before you were born. Webb raises his gun, but Tommy is already moving. 3 years of ranch work have made him quick and strong. He tackles his uncle around the waist, driving them both into the rubble. The gun discharges, the bullet whining off stone. Tommy grapples for the weapon, his uncle's expensive cologne mixing with the smell of ash and fear. You always were weak, Webb snarls, bringing his knee up toward Tommy's ribs. Tommy twists aside, the blow glancing off his hip. His fist connects with his uncle's jaw, snapping the older man's head back. Maybe, Tommy gasps. But I'm not alone. Marshal Kane emerges from the shadows, her rifle trained on Webb. Territorial Governor Harrison Webb, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and corruption of federal officials. Webb spits blood, his eyes burning with hatred. You have no proof. I have your confession. Every word recorded by a federal stenographer hidden in these ruins. A figure emerges from deeper in the basement, a thin man with ink-stained fingers and a portable recording device. The whole conversation, Marshal, the stenographer confirms, clear as church bells. Webb's face crumbles as the weight of his situation settles in. You can't. I'm the territorial governor. You're a criminal, Kane says simply. And criminals face justice. The sound of gunfire erupts above them. Collins and his men, realizing the trap too late. But Kane had brought more than just a stenographer. Federal agents pour into the ruins, their badges glinting in the lamplight. Tommy climbs out of the basement, his uncle in custody, and looks up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. For the first time in 3 years he feels like he can breathe. What happens now? He asks Kane. Now we rebuild. The territory gets a new governor. The Jackrabbit Gang faces trial. And you? She pins the deputy marshal's badge to his shirt. You helped me clean up the mess your uncle made. Tommy touches the badge, feeling its weight. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. You faced down a corrupt governor and his gang of killers. I'd say you're cut out for whatever you choose to be. Tommy looks back at the ruins of the Morrison Ranch, then toward the lights of Copper Creek in the distance. Somewhere between the two he finds his future. Deputy Marshal Thomas Brennan, he says, testing the words. Has a nice ring to it. Kane smiles. Yes, it does. They walk toward town together, leaving the ghosts of the past buried in the ashes behind them. Tomorrow will bring trials and testimony, justice and healing. Tonight, it's enough to know that good men can still make a difference in a world that often seems determined to crush them. The stars shine down on Copper Creek, and for the first time in years, they shine on a town where justice wears a badge and corruption lies in chains. Some families are born from blood. The best families are forged from choice. Tommy Brennan, no longer running, no longer hiding, walks into his future with his head held high and his conscience clear. The shy cowboy is gone. The lawman remains.